you have people who are leaders or develop into leaders, but then you have this whole other level of leadership where you take initiative for the benefit of others.
We know that we're kind of filtering in a group of people that leaders need to have something connected to their heart. Like there's obviously great books and great podcasts and plenty of mentors, but it's the pursuit of increasing your capacity for stress and responsibility.
Hey, welcome to the Relevant Development Podcast. My name is Juan. I am your host, and today my guest is John Carroll. John, how are you doing today?
Man, I'm doing great, Juan. Thanks for having me.
And where are you coming to us from?
I am in Memphis, Tennessee.
If we talk long enough, people will be able to hear it a little bit. I know that I can. I love it.
Yeah, man, we're down here in the South. It's wonderful. It's raining a little bit today, but man, it's a great place to live and a great place to do good.
Yeah, awesome. I know that we've talked offline a couple times already.
Yeah,
but you are one incredible leader. Tell us about where you are today in your leadership journey and what you do.
Well, one, thank you for the compliment. I think that the reality is where I'm at today is not where I ever thought I was going to be in life, but it's just been a perpetual motion of trying to pursue how do what I say is leadership is we take initiative for the benefit of others, and how that's kind of led throughout our journey is trying to figure out what to do for a career. As being an entrepreneur, that led to a bunch of different things, but then trying to use that career for good. And that's led me to a nonprofit that we call City Leadership. And that nonprofit started in 2010. And we exist to recruit, develop, and catalyze leaders for the city of Memphis. And so not necessarily the mayor or the city government, but really thinking more about the community and where that fits. And so ultimately that I just kind of boil it down to is we get up every day and try to help the good guys do more good. And I get to lead the charge of our team of 20 that get up and try to proactively help the city and help the people helping the city.
How long has city leadership been a thing?
Man, it's going to be 14 years, May 1st of 2024. Wow. So, started with me and one other guy. And over time, we've had over 50 full-time employees. We currently have 20, and it's just been a fun adventure.
Why did it come to be? Was there a difference in your heart and like something that you feel you wanted to do as opposed to, bro, we need to do something about our city? Like it was more of a need than a want, or did it share both? Like how did it come to be?
Well, I'd been in business and I'd also been really involved in our local church. And as we were trying to think through kind of where the gaps were in between that kind of stuff, it was, I didn't really understand what nonprofits were. And there was a desire to live out, love your neighbors, you love yourself. And what I realized for me is that one, like I wasn't wired to go run the homeless shelter. I wasn't wired to go, even not just run a school, but even just be a school teacher. I did a tour of duty and was even a teacher for a couple of years, but that just wasn't for me. And so I didn't find myself getting up any day of the week super passionate about one specific issue in our community. And so, but what I was really excited about was thinking about leaders being more impactful with the things they were passionate about. And so everywhere I'd been, whether it had been our business or our church or our neighborhood, or even growing up, like school and stuff, there wasn't like one thing that excited me. It was kind of like everybody doing their thing really excited me. And as I looked around, I didn't really see anybody thinking about kind of the leader of the org, especially back then in the nonprofit sector. So I thought, what if I started an org that went out and helped those people bring kind of business sense, measurement, different aspects. They knew how to do their work better than me or anybody else. They didn't need advice on that. What they needed was an efficient way to maximize their work, strategically measure and emphasize their work in the most impactful ways. And so I thought, let's see if I could help with that. And as it started just helping out a little bit, it ended up being a lot of help needed. And so, we've We don't have any problem finding people to help. We have a lot of problem of trying to figure out who to say no to, unfortunately. And so I'd love to have a team of 40 instead of a team of 20 because there's plenty of room to make a difference. Yeah.
Yeah, you said something earlier, and I'm paraphrasing. I think I missed a word when I was writing it down. You said you take initiative every day for others.
Yeah. So leadership, taking initiative for the benefit of others.
Yeah. Where does that come from? Because my whole belief system in leadership is that there's general leadership, right? Under the umbrella of leadership, there's leadership, right? But then there's servant leadership, and then there's like stewardship. How does somebody, because it's not everybody's cup of tea, right? I just did a post today on Instagram and on LinkedIn that basically said, putting up the question, are there quote unquote natural born leaders? And I think it's John Maxwell that says, when was the last time you saw somebody born a leader? And so the example they gave is like, the doctor doesn't go like, oh, it's a boy or a girl, and oh, look, they're a leader. Like it's developed. However, in that same boat, if you will, you have people who are leaders or develop into leaders, but then you have this whole other level of leadership where you take initiative for the benefit of others when other people are like, I'm just going to lead this group or this department to the next level. But you're like, no, we need to do this for other people. Where does that come from for you? And then how does one maybe develop that? Or is it a heart thing? Is it like, what is it?
Yeah. Great question. I think as we're defining that, one of those things is trying to think through, is that big statement like everybody's a leader, and everybody can be a leader, everybody should be a leader. And I think this is something you and I even said is like if everyone's a leader, who's a follower? Is one of our regular kind of side conversations kind of stuff. But for us, my belief is that there's a lot of people trying to make money off people buying books and going to conferences and listening to podcasts and stuff about leadership. So everybody's got to be a leader, so everybody could possibly be a customer, instead of really thinking about what leadership really is. And so in the reality of saying that not everyone's a leader doesn't make a leader isn't necessarily better than somebody. It's just a position on a team. Like not everybody's a team captain. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're the best player on the team or that you're more or less important than anybody else. You can't do it without a whole team. But kind of where does that fit in? And then really understanding what's the difference between leadership, in that context for a team, for others, for that kind of stuff versus ambition, and I think that a lot of times in our culture right now, it's easy to see people who are, putting focus on their own hero journey and they want to make you a fan of them. That's not necessarily a leader, they're not your leader. You might be a fan, but that doesn't mean leadership. And so just trying to do the difference. One, giving people the out, like, hey, you don't have to be the leader. There's a lot of roles, in the system, and some of those are leadership roles. And then understanding the difference. Just because you are ambitious or you're growing or you're significant or because you're talented doesn't mean you're a leader either. Like that might be for your own benefit or for your own stuff. And so defining that around the, leadership really helps people contextualize what's the difference between those things. Leadership is when I initiate, I take initiative. I'm doing something, it could be proactive or reactive, but for that purpose of others ultimately. And that is, community leadership, people, self-leadership, all that kind of stuff, that kind of stuff. But where that comes from, honestly, is just a desire for clarity of being able to help people contextualize where they're at in that space. And then if people are doing that, then who are those people who are taking initiative for the benefit of others? That helps you define kind of out of everybody that's doing good, where do we fit in focusing? Where do we focus our effort in that space? And that helps us kind of separate, because there's a lot of people doing good. But the people who are taking this, those are the people that we want to be in contact with, and realizing that it doesn't necessarily mean it's only the point boss person. It could be several different people inside of that space that we're working with. And then, for me, the reason why I do it is because that is the way that I'm able to bring my gifts to the rest of the team into that space of coaching, consulting, challenging, helping create leaders for a community like that. I believe it's the best way to love my community for me. And so
Right.
I get excited about that.
Do you think, kind of talking about development in leadership and, not everyone's born to be a leader. And do you think that it's a heart thing, or is it like it's a mission thing of somebody, it's a heart thing, or it's still a developmental thing in the different types of leadership? Like, I'm going to lead a department, or I'm going to lead the leaders, right? There's, like you said, it's a position, but there's different positions of leadership in what you do, right? You're building leaders for your community. What kind of matrix do you use, or metrics, excuse me, that you use to kind of understand where, or put people in what spots of leadership, if you will?
Right.
Um, but at the same time, is that, again, does it go to a heart thing, or a mission thing, or like, can you develop somebody, or is it like sticking a square peg in a round hole? Like, I'm going to help you get to this to this part of
Mhm.
development. I'm just going to shove you in there. Or do you find people that says, hey, John, you know what? You have me do this, but my heart is really over here. Then what do you do? I know the question's kind of all the way around, but I just want to be able to understand, how do leaders find their spot?
Mm.
And
Mm.
then maybe, like, what do you guys do in your organization when you're helping somebody kind of develop as well? That
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I do think that leaders need to have something connected to their heart. Like, it doesn't need to be just a logical, passion, right? Like I just think that passion, it sits here, and the logic sits up here. And so I just think, most oftentimes we find leaders that have a passion and tune. Now, they may be more a cerebral leader versus William Wallace kind of stuff. And so it doesn't mean that you can't be intelligence first and inside of that. But a lot of us, so oftentimes, lead with our heart, or find our hearts lead us to a thing that we need to think deeply about. And so I think that's where we find that. What I don't think, though, is that leaders, corner the market alone on passion, right? I think that, man, a lot of faithful followers and people who are contributing in significant ways, they feel that same passion. It's just that their gift mix isn't based around what we would think of as like traditional kind of calling the shots leadership kind of deal. And then I do think that leadership and management are necessarily two different things. A lot of leaders get caught up into management and that kind of stuff as well. But managers end up having a different kind of like structural team leadership, and that's the leadership that we oftentimes are developing in people, and making sure that we don't lose their passion for what they're doing, or their skill set gets lost in the midst of the difference that they're making, while we burden them with the responsibilities of management leadership. And I think that those are the skills that we put on people and train organizationally and challenge and can develop. And then what you see is people who have a higher propensity for that, or who find more significance in some of those kind of areas, those people really thrive. And then the people who really found like they're wearing, someone else's armor, so to speak, those people kind of go, over time, be like, hey, like, is this really for me? And you kind of start wrestling with that with them. And then you get better and better over time at kind of identifying that, beforehand. The other thing that besides the management side, is how do you train and build skills around your heart, and that kind of stuff. And a lot of that has to deal with your maturity, and continue to challenge people to step through and go, hey, just because your heart feels it, how do you express it? When do you say it? How do you challenge it? Where does that other aspect come out? And a lot of that comes through either training up that leader of knowing when should they be asking for guidance and wisdom from others, and when do they need to just step out on faith and try something and learn as they try it. And I think that as we set up better mentor and even mentees for current leaders, they can step into talking to a sage about, hey, what did you do when you were here in this space? talking to their warriors and leading them in a certain way and seeing how that reaction gets back. And then having another, what we say is council of queens and kings that you surround yourself around. And so as a leader, at whatever level you're at, whether you're leading a multi-million-dollar nonprofit or a Fortune 500 company or your local neighborhood association, like having other people that you can kind of bounce things off of and be able to say like, hey, when y'all do this, how does this happen? You do this, and having peers who you're not necessarily leading, but you're able to be really open and honest with. And those three kinds of relationships help out organizationally. And then the last thing is every leader, no matter where you're at, needs a friend, just a true friend that is not your mentor, not someone who reports to you, not your peer that you're whatever, but just a friend, just a true friend that knows your heart, knows your whatever, and is willing to just do whatever you want for it. And that's, if you've got those, 4 relationships around you as a leader, then that's how you get developed. And so a lot of times for us at City Leadership, we're helping you discover who those relationships are, and then giving you advice and coaching and wisdom of how to lean that out. And then we let that play out over time. Like, do you actually go pursue that? Well, then we know that you're going to develop and grow in a leader. Like, what kind of feedback are you getting from those different angles? Then you're going to be able to see it, because really the reality is I can't pressure cook leadership, 10 hours or 10 weeks or whatever, and just all of a sudden bake a leader, throw some ingredients, whatever. It's more of like who you are coming out. And those are things that can kind of bring you out to that, because there's so much of natural leadership that is wisdom and faith intertwined through relationship and experience.
Yeah, and that was going to be one of my questions, and you've answered most of it. But what do you look for in a leader? Because you're saying that you're bringing people in, and there's some recruitment, and then there's some, you're training some people. So, is there two things here? What do you look for in a leader, and then what are some warning signs where you're like, yep, you're not even going to get past the first stage, or let's not even recruit that person, or it's later on in the thing that they're doing really good. They have a lot of potential, and you're like, man, this could be their kryptonite. Like, this is either going to make them or it's going to break them. So then you as a leader, because at the end of the day, I would think that your name, or the organization's name for that matter, you have to sign behind, and sign your name at this person saying like, hey, they're one of us. Mm-hmm. Like, are there any warning signs in a sense on the, I hate to say negative, but the negative side of things? And then are there signs that you look for in people when you're like, this is going to be a great leader one day?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one, for us, just for scale, like in Choose 901, like we are trying to attract what we believe is the next generation of servant leaders, people who want to be in this kind of nonprofit kind of work. And so the couple of things we do is, we communicate to college graduates the opportunity to take initiative for the benefit of others in teaching and social work and that kind of stuff. And the way we talk about it is investing the next season of your life and those kind of things. So just by, you picking that over something else, we know that we're kind of filtering in a group of people that they're going to make a difference. These 300-400 people we recruit every year are going to make a difference through this different kind of process. And then we let that pressure cooker of teaching in a school and going through that process kind of, and their own peers around them, kind of let those leaders kind of rise to the top. And I say rise to the top or move towards the bottom.
Right. Well, how long would that process be? I mean, I know that you kind of just let it be, but is there like, hey, let this cook for a year or 2 or 3? What's the time frame on that?
Yeah, I think, with different leaders, there's different kind of stuff, but, a lot of our programs, it's hard to get into a leadership role on the education side if you haven't at least done a couple of years, like in the classroom or in that kind of space. So usually about 2, you can start to see the difference between people who are going, man, let's tag this person, whatever, because oftentimes in our culture and our whatever, it's the person who's not just being a great teacher, because I think let's just take education. One of the big leadership problems we make all the time is because you're a great teacher, we want to make you an assistant principal or a vice principal. Well, the big negative there is that now we just have it filled a gap with like a great teacher's now gone, right?
Right.
What we need is a person who wants a great leader. And so it's the person, not just because they do their job well, it's because when they start bringing up conversations to leadership around, hey, what if we did this? And have we ever tried that? And you know what? One thing I'm seeing is when we do this, this happens. And I think when you start seeing those kind of things in 20-year-olds or even whatever age, as they enter into a new field, when they start asking you as a leader questions and start bringing curiosity to potential problems, or they even start exposing blindside kind of thing with not just pointing out problems, but actually entering in with, hey, I was thinking about this solution to a problem I'm seeing. That really signifies something that, like, somebody who wants to be a part of that organizational kind of leadership kind of structure. Because oftentimes leaders organizationally are creating the culture and the conduit and the atmosphere for other talent to be able to succeed. And I think that when you see them asking those questions, now complaining about those scenarios, that's a different thing. But man, providing solutions and those kind of things, those are things I'm going, hey, let's be on the lookout. Let's watch that person. That's kind of stuff. I think the other side is that when people go into like a leadership class or a leadership training or a leadership forum, one of the things we look at is you see dynamics of not just how, you know, people going through the class and how they take your class, but how do the other leaders around them react? The other potential leaders react to them. You know, are they put off by them, or are they kind of attracted to them? Do they naturally kind of provide stuff in there? And you can kind of see it pretty easily. Is, are they trying to impress everyone, or are they really trying to serve the group? And that stuff is really, I think, easy to see if you know what you're looking for. And honestly, we see with our more mature leaders who are trying to make that selection, try to identify that, that's easy for them to see because they've seen leaders over time, and they've learned, hey, the person who's maybe the most active isn't necessarily, you know, always the best leader from the group or the best person for whatever, because they might be doing it for their own benefit. Yeah. And I think what ends up happening is, as a leader, if you're desperate for help, you end up making stretches and giving people the benefit of the doubt before you really know that they actually can lead along with you. But if you've got a healthy culture, you can be a little more patient, a little more looky, and try to figure out that. I think the last thing is that one of the things we always do is we're intentional about putting opportunities for people to show themselves, you know, in little ways. I'll tell you one little thing that we do. This is not just about leadership, but this is just about to kind of learn. When someone applies for a job with us, we will just, you know, if we're actually interested in their resume and want to interview them, a lot of times we'll be like, hey, got your resume or got your application or got whatever. One of the things we were wondering is, what are your Strength Finders 2.0 results? End stop. We don't send a link to that thing. We don't send an example. We don't send whatever. All it is just a random kind of question pop. The results do matter to us, but if we get back a thing of, what is that? Yeah. That's a sign that says, like, oh, hold on, you can't even Google. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not going to take initiative to take whatever. Or if we get back just their flat results, or I don't know, or I've never heard it. Or here's the reality is, that test, actually, there's two ways to take it. $19 is one way to take it. Another way to take it that they push first is actually $49, but there's another way to take it that's only $19 on the same website. Right. So, like, if they come back,
full 34 results.
Yeah. They come back and go like, hey, that's $49. Are you going to give me the money? Like, here, I would pay for it. I just want to see how they're going to do it. So you take those little sorts of examples. We do that for application. We do that in all sorts of little ways inside our office, and even with some of our clients, like little things like, hey, what do you think about this? Or what? We kind of lob over an opportunity and just see how they're reacting, see how they're initiating. Or like, even like an employee, I might say to them, like, if I think they might be a leader, be like, hey, let's get together and talk about sometime, like, who we think might be good for something, whatever. And then, do they follow up? Do they initiate? Do they whatever? And then giving them a thing where I'd say, like, hey, if we were able to restructure something for a project, who would be your dream team and why? Asking them to think through some of those kind of things, like they would have to really do it. And those are really fun ways to see leaders kind of express themselves and grow, or not. And that really helps. as a,
right. I'd be all over that. My number one is strategic. So like
yes.
I'd be so much thought into that. And fairly quickly, you said something earlier that I would love to get your take on. How do we not hoard great team members, right? We're trying to create leaders, but you mentioned a really good teacher, and then if we promote them into this other position, then we've just lost a really good teacher. I've learned that there are some people that will kill it even better in that leadership position, and you're like, wow, I thought you were a kick-ass teacher. Now, like, now that you're in this other spot, like, why didn't we move you up quicker? But then you have the flip side of that coin where it's like, oh my God, you were just a really good teacher. Like it didn't translate, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you know, hey, we just need to keep this person here, that they're a really good teacher? Because like I would hate because like my son's school is just down the street, and his first grade teacher became an assistant principal. And prior to that, she ended up being like a head lead teacher or whatever. And that spot was really, really cool. She was developing a lot of teachers, but then she became an assistant principal. And I'm like, two groups are missing out. Those kids, my son went in his first grade. She made him like a book club leader, or whatever. He went from, within 1 year, went from like second grade reading level into first grade to like 6th or 7th grade reading level.
Wow.
And his reading was phenomenal. And then when she became like this like head teacher trainer, I was like, well, hopefully she could make more of her, like duplicate herself. And then they made her an assistant principal, and she's great. But I'm like, oh man, either these kids are missing out, or the opportunity for all these teachers to learn under her is out the window. Now she's going to be pushing paper and meeting with kids that are delinquent and issues and parents and stuff like that. And she can handle that, but it's like, but how do we also grow people but not hoard people at the same time? And then how do we know, hey, you're not capped out, but you're just really good at this spot?
Right.
Like, is there like some type of filter or an assessment that you use, or like how does one in a real leadership position that's in charge of development know who to develop and who not to moving forward?
Yeah, I think one of those things, Juan, is asking yourself and the person that you're looking at, it's not always a promotion to get leadership. Sometimes it's sentencing to leadership. But I think the person that you're trying to identify as giving them some more leadership responsibility, or the reason why, like asking them and asking yourself, why? Like, why am I picking this person, or why does this person actually want it? Because, one of the things that we found, just quite simply, is that we'll just take teaching, for example. So oftentimes our public teaching method, it's like, you got to teach this long and you can only go this kind of stuff. Well, if I'm willing to go to a leadership thing, well, I can make a financial jump, 10 grand, 15 grand a year. And I'm just in a financial situation where, I need to make a financial jump. And my career is making these $1,000 a year jumps isn't enough for where I'm at financially. So I've been teaching for 8 years. I love teaching. I'm the best teacher in my school, or I'm a great, super effective, highly effective teacher, but I've got to move to administration because my lifestyle or season of life, or my kids really need me to, and that kind of stuff. And so asking that question, and there's nothing wrong with needing money like that. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think as you're in this spot as a leader and you're going, well, you've been a great teacher and our assistant principal is leaving, and so it seems like you'd be a great fit, making sure you ask that real why, because a lot of times, people are hiding that financial piece as a reason why, because they don't want it to be like, well, I just really need more money. Like, they don't want to say that. Right. And so when they don't say it, they try to stretch themselves into, or they try to talk themselves into whatever. And the reality is they don't really even know what they're getting themselves into. And they've spent their 10,000 hours becoming incredible teachers. Right. And then you realize that the job is way more administrative and all sorts of finances and, HR issues and all sorts of things like that you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. Right. It's a totally different gift mix. And then, or you got to realize is like, as a leader, like, even if that person wants to make the jump, and even if that is a real passion of theirs, even if they'd say, man, I'd take a $5,000 pay cut to get to that because it interests me so much. They just went through 4 years likely, or maybe even a master's in education. And then they learned how to teach, and then they actually got better at teaching, and they got better every year for the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And now they're immediately going to go from like May 30th, their last day of teaching, to 6 weeks later showing up, and now they're an administrator without any major training, or any sort of whatever. If you don't think that's going to take a dip leadership wise and like whatever, like you need to be thinking as a leader really thoughtfully around what is all those other things that they need training. And you're not going to be able to get that in 10 podcasts and 2 books and reading the manual from what the person did before. Like, it's going to take a minute to learn how to express that. We usually say it takes a leader 3 seasons, 3 cycles to really be able to get to a place where that you actually really know that they're going to be long-term successful and be able to grow into that spot, because they have to experience it. Then they have to do it kind of their own way. And then they have to maximize a year. They have to actually make it better. And then they realize that after the 3rd cycle, cycles 4 through whatever are just cycle 3 over and over and over again, doing it again and making it a little bit better, doing it. And that's what you have to be passionate for. And our learners, they like year 1 over and over and over again, right? And our fragile people they get crushed by year 2. Like they get crushed in year 2 and whatever. So our learners, they switch jobs every other year. Our people who are fragile get crushed in year 2. But the people who are really passionate about leading long-term, they do well in year 3, but they don't think they did well. And they want a year 4 to get better. They want another year to get better and that kind of stuff. So that's a big piece of kind of learning how you're building that out. But you've got to be thoughtful. I mean, just because I lose, a quarterback doesn't mean I go, well, this lineman really wants to be a quarterback. You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes every once in a while you're just like, hey, we're gonna go find a youngster in the draft, and we're gonna go figure out, because somebody's skill set really builds around it. And I think that again, we're talking about education. A bunch of different fields have these limitations, but education's one where it's hard to get into the administration if you haven't been an educator. And I think that, a lot of times we need to be thinking about roles that like, hey, how do we bring in people with other talents into this space, no matter what your field is, where they've got expertise and leadership in these other kind of realms. So
do you have a suggestion on how somebody levels up their leadership? I mean, and I hate to use the words level up their leadership because it's just the key words, right? But like, how does one level up? Like, is there a book that you give them, a training course that you give them? And then where? Like, do I start with better communication? Do I start with how do I handle difficult people or difficult situations? Or do I go about empathy, which is another buzzword? But like, where do I start if I want to quote unquote, level up my leadership?
Yeah, I think people are different. And so, some people love to read, other people love to listen. Some people love to watch stuff. Other people like to talk about it a lot and to verbally process, and most of us need to experience. But really the reality is probably everybody who's good at anything experiences all of those, right? All those kind of come together to do something. But the universal thing that I'd say that's outside of, there's obviously great books and great podcasts and plenty of mentors, but it's the pursuit of increasing your capacity for stress and responsibility.
Ooh,
and
I like honestly, that. Say that again.
Yeah. So I think leaders grow when they intentionally pursue stress and responsibility, and not just infinite amounts of stress and not infinite amounts of responsibility, but when they pursue a little bit more stress, a little bit more responsibility, and they continue to master that and grow their capacity for both of those. What happens, Juan, is the reality is that everyone you admire in life has an incredible capacity for stress and responsibility. It doesn't matter if they're an incredible singing performer, or if they're a financial analyst, or if they're entertainment or interviewer, or whoever it is. They make it look easy because they've over time built their capacity where they're not stressed out about that, right? Like, and usually these roles are like the people who manage billion-dollar companies at some point were managing something so much smaller, right? Like people don't give billion-dollar companies to somebody who's never done it, right? And the people aren't asking people to come run entire school districts if you have no experience, leading people or leading organizations, all that kind of stuff. And so it builds over time. And so, the big enemy in this is our culture tries to push us to say, hey, it's cool not caring. And they try to get you to go like, hey, this is just about you out here. You're in a team meeting and somebody's like, hey, can anybody do this extra project, or can anybody stay late over here? Or I really need somebody. I'm going to be out of town next week. I need somebody that can run that parent teacher conference. Or, hey, we've got a client that's coming in 2 weeks and we need a presentation built for that to be able to explain what we're doing. It's not in your responsibility. Nobody's raising their hand up. You're kind of like, don't look at me. I don't want to be doing this stuff. I'm too busy doing my job. But you're going, man, that'll help grow me. That'll build me. That's the kind of stuff. And you raise your hand and you volunteer and you say, hey, put it on me. Let me see if I can do it. Let me prove it. And again, not that you have to say yes to everything, but you're finding those strategic times to stretch yourself, add a little more to your plate. And then what happens is as you do that everything kind of gets easier and gets a little bit as you grow it. It's the same thing like working out, right? Like you don't go in the gym and put 400 pounds on the bar and go, you know what? I'm going to get really strong. I'm going to push on this, whatever. You could go in the gym every day for the rest of your life. And if you start at 400 pounds, you're not going anywhere. Yeah. But if you go start at the bar and you lift that, 10 times 3 sets, and you do that every day for a week, then you can add some weights and you add some weights and you add some weights, and you learn how, what your body's capable of. Right. And some people can actually bench 400 pounds. I don't even know what that would even be like, right? Like I can't even bench half that. But in our leadership ability, some people can do that. Other people, man, 150 pounds, and they do it every day and it's whatever. And that's their capacity in the leadership. That's what they're wired for. But you learn that when you keep stretching yourself. And I think that that's what we have to do as leaders, is stretch ourselves a little bit, not so much that we always are failing or always whatever, or we can't really do anything, but we keep stretching ourselves. And eventually people will be looking at you going, man, you make that look easy. And you won't even realize it. You're like, oh, that's just what I do. Like, and it's not about an ego thing. It's literally just about, oh, that's my capacity. That's my ability. It's where you feel naturally whatever. And if you're doing less than that, you feel underutilized. Right. And I think that's where, when you know, as a leader that you're downshifting, you can kind of feel it, because you're not able to maximize your benefit for others. And so, but that if you're overextending, if you're in the red zone, that kind of car, that red zone, man, if I stay here, I'm going to blow a gasket.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a great example with the weightlifting thing. I think in reality, for those listeners, it's those people who go back to school, right? You work and you might have a family, right? And you go back to school and you add something else on your plate, right? Or I mean, just think of like just a regular couple. Like it's funny because my wife and I can go back to thinking about, we both work, and you come home and you're like, what are we gonna do? We have a nice dinner, we watch TV, whatever. And like, let's go somewhere. And then something happens. And you're like, I don't know if we have enough time. And then you have kids and then you have another kid. And it's like, dude, where did we find the time to do all this stuff? But it's like one little thing gets added and one little thing gets added. And now we have 2 homes and 3 kids and 2 cars and different sports. And it's like, I asked my wife just the other day, I was like, remember when it was just a simpler time? Like how are we juggling all this stuff? But the whole thing of increasing stress and responsibility, like we can take on the world, like we can do more. And it's funny because we talked about, do we have another kid? And she's like, no, I think we're good. Right. But it's at the same time, it's like, we'd be able to do it. I know we would be able to do it, and just the time in our lives where I think we have a good control over everything, but taking it right back to the workplace of, hey, I want to do more. You have to see those things as an opportunity. How is this going to increase my stress, and how is it going to increase my responsibility, and just that little bit, and just expand. And then before you know it, it's like, oh my gosh, I can do this. I love that little baby step, if you will. I mean, it's still big, but you don't do
Yeah.
something like you said where you're going to blow a gasket, right? Or I'm failing. I like how you said that. Like I'm failing every single day. Okay, too much,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Just increase it just a little bit.
Well, I think one thing, Juan, I was talking to a leader the other day and realizing that they were just at the cusp, like their experience over the last 5-6 years had grown their ability for stress and responsibility, but like they were looking at, making a leap professionally. They were also looking at thinking about like, hey, him and his wife were like, hey, we're ready to have a baby. And at the same time, just personally, he had the opportunity to, buy a boat. And man, I was just wrestling with him. I go, man, that is so cool. I'm so glad to celebrate all that kind of stuff with you. I go, man, I just want to give you some advice. You need to pick 2 of those right now. Like you're about to pick all 3 over the next 60 days. Like I'm worried that all of that at the same time, like you're not going to be able to enjoy it or be successful, or you're going to kind of miss something. And so you need to stagger those a little bit. And so I think you just need whatever. I was like, man, if you want to go enjoy a boat, I'd probably like, be like, hey, maybe I'm going to hold off on a job, the next job thing, because we're focusing on family. He's like, well, like I need the extra money for the family thing. I'm like, okay, well then if you're going to pick the family, then go pick the thing. Maybe hold off on the buzz. But I'd pick one of those because you're telling me about those 3. My guess would be, knowing you, there's probably 3 other things that you're just kind of naturally growing in, or kind of naturally whatever. And I was like, man, what ends up happening is that plate you're spinning ends up having way too much food on it.
Yeah.
And it's just hanging off the edges and that kind of stuff. And so just, thinking cautiously about that, but then you grow your capacity and thinking through it. And as a leader, you don't really learn a lot of that till it's too late. And I think like me and you were talking about, I was like, golly, it's crazy. I got all these kids, all this job responsibility, all this kind of stuff. Something's got to give. And that's when you feel as a leader, like you have to quit something. But that is honestly good leadership as well. Because so many of us are in the spot right now of going, I got to quit something. And so how do we use that logic backwards a little bit to go, I'm not good for anybody if I'm trying to be good for everybody.
Right.
And so what can we quit well is a skill as leaders that we have to model and exemplify, and realize that you can't lead everything. So what are the things that mean the most to me, and where am I going to lead? And where do I need to step back?
Yeah. There's a Super Bowl commercial. I don't know if they showed it where you were, but here they showed it. I think it was an Uber Eats commercial. And it was like, in order to remember something, I have to forget something.
Oh, yes. I saw that. It was great. It was a great commercial.
I know. I'm looking around like, is anybody catching this like thought leadership like lesson right now? But no, that's the first thing I thought of when you were saying that. And it's just and here's a crazy thing. And this is, and I hopefully can speak to those people listening, and to anyone that that's listening here, is that you have a really good leader when they take time to help you take a step back and actually think of something. Because anybody else would be like, cool, man, buy a boat. Can I be the first one on it? Like, let me know when you get it. But for somebody to say, man, are you thinking okay? Like someone that's going to take the time out. And that's to me, that's true leadership, right? I'm going to teach somebody a thought process that they're not seeing or thinking about right now. Let me put them through this little process right now, and then have them think about, hey, maybe you want to rethink this. But that's how you have a good leader, right? Was where they make you think a little bit more than what you're currently doing, so you can grow in your thought process. I did want to ask you one more question. I'm going to save it for a different time. Moving forward, kind of closing things out. There's somebody in your area in Memphis, or maybe somebody wants to move into Memphis, or just wanting to know like the process of what you do. Somebody goes into your workplace through your filter, if you will, of leadership. What does somebody go through? Kind of telling me a little bit about the organization again, but what can somebody expect in their leadership journey when they meet you and your organization?
Man, that's a great question. And I think there's several different people that we could follow a journey on to help them think through that. And so I want to pick one, but I may just do a fast forward of a couple just so you can kind of hear it. So in our Choose 901 program, we're trying to recruit and retain college graduates to get them to invest and enjoy their life in Memphis. And so what they really experience with us is being able to, we try to intentionally guide them towards being here without persuasion. Our big goal is like, we just try to create clarity of what it would look like to spend the next season of your life investing here. And then we trust that if you're supposed to be here, if you're the quality of person that we really want here, that you'll kind of self-eliminate if you shouldn't be here. And you will have to be here if you're supposed to be here. And then we put it back on our stuff, actually interview process to kind of help filter out the couple that maybe shouldn't be in that space. But so the recruitment piece is all about just trying to show you what your life would be like. And then once you get here, we try to, as quickly as possible, get you to become a Memphian, understand the history of the city, actually experience good stuff. We call it theory of sixes. So it's everything from the 6 months before you actually get here, like in your application recruitment. And so we do 6 months before, 6 weeks before, 6 days before, 6 hours before you actually get here. And then the 6 hours after you get here, the 6 days, the 6 weeks, and the 6 months. Wow. So we have ideas around that year window because we're like trying to help you filter yourself and we're trying to filter you. But like even a one little thing, Juan, that I think is really interesting is like, if we know that you're thinking about moving to Memphis, we're really intentional about getting you to follow stuff around Memphis, 6 months before you actually move here in your social media. Because we know you're going to spend 2 to 3 hours a day looking at Instagram and Snapchat. So you have to be not just our org, but just things around Memphis, all sorts of things, like whatever. We try to get you to follow one of those things every single time we interact with you. We try to add something to it. So we're kind of boiling the frog a little bit in that.
Yeah.
After you get here, man, the biggest welcome party, history of Memphis, first 6 weeks, you're doing all sorts of things. We're making sure like you can eat at Chili's and Starbucks in any city in the country. We want you in our hometown restaurants and our hometown coffee shops, seeing a sunset over the river, because when your parents come to town, we want you to be able to show them around, or your family, or whatever, like you own the place, and our whole goal is most of people move here in the summer. We want to win the conversation of when they go home for Thanksgiving. People may not know what it's like to be a teacher or a social worker or make a difference in a person's life. They may not be able to relate to a ton of that, but everyone knows what it's like to live someplace. And everyone in your family, all your friends are going to ask you, how's Memphis? And I want to win that question.
Yeah.
If I can win that question your first Thanksgiving home, I'm highly likely to be able to retain you because your family's going to support what you're passionate about. They can't argue about the fact that you no longer live in the hometown, whatever, if you're saying that place is for me, whatever. So we're really thoughtful around that sort of experience. Now, similar, our Choose 901 alumni program, which you get into that because you're in one of our schools and you graduate high school and you're in that for the next 10 years. We try to make these kids who've grown up in Memphis, we try to integrate them into the adulthood and leadership of Memphis. You think about like a relay race, that those lines where you're passing the baton, where you've got one person, you're passing the baton to another. In life, there's some moments where you're kind of one version of yourself, kind of passing the baton of yourself to another version of yourself.
Right.
And from 18 to 28, 18 through, that development of like career and college, education kind of stuff. That's really a baton passing moment. You just had this big 18-year run. And then some of us, that's a 2 to 3 year baton passing moment. Some of it's all 10 years. But that's where you're kind of passing the baton. You're kind of figuring yourself out as an adult for another kind of 15 to 20 year run for a little bit. And so we really, really think through kind of meeting you in that space and guiding you through that process of who you were to who you want to be. And so in that, man, we are helping you think through that. We're asking those questions. We're encouraging you. And we're trying to plug you into other people who've made that journey, mentorship and that sort of space. And so, and that's a really fun season. We've got over 2,000 alumni right now. We'll have 5,000 by 2031. And so keeping up with those relationships, it's a lot of work, but we think it really pays off for this next generation. We we believe that these students can be a part of the puzzle piece for 2030 to 2050 for all of Memphis. And so, we're really bullish on that. And then I'll just take one more for the teachers. Our biggest thing is that the schools will actually determine whether or not you are an effective teacher. And so we trust them to train and keep you upgrading, that kind of stuff. What we want you to do is to feel appreciated and honored and cared for by the community surrounding you. So our big desire is if you get in our Teach 911 program and you're looking for jobs and you want to be a part of that, what we try to do is we try to bring the community together to surround you and encourage you in that process. So we want people to say thank you to you. We want people to honor you in whatever neighborhood, community, or environment they're in. We've convinced the Memphis Grizzlies to have games where they honor teachers and make a big deal and get the whole arena clapping for you and that kind of stuff. We've convinced churches and synagogues and places to be able to have Sundays where they would honor all the teachers in their congregation. And we even started a We Love Teachers campaign, which is a business model where businesses can express their love. Not that teachers are more important than policemen and firemen, but in that same sort of vein that, hey, these are these public servants that are out there doing this kind of stuff. And so if you get in that program, we're trying to make much of you and honor the service of time, because we realize that we need to retain you and for you to be fueled in that space. And so we're trying to create raving fans of the teachers in our community. So there's some other things we do, but those are kind of three examples of some intentionality we have.
That's awesome. I want to ask you one last question that I wrote down because I loved how you spoke about it in that first example. Why is it so important for you guys to get homegrown, use homegrown? And if you're not homegrown, we're going to make it feel like you're homegrown. Like, what can other organizations and companies learn from you in that? But why is that also so important to you?
Well, I think truly, Juan, our number one focus is we believe is that people, like, community is possible when you view the people around you as people that you should love, right? Like you, and you want to love in that sort of space. So I think if you don't love the community, and you got to understand the community to be able to have grace and patience for it. And if you can have grace and patience for the community, then you can start to figure out where you can contribute, where you can be significant in the community. And I think that also takes some guidance, like, because a lot of people feel like, man, what could I do? What would it matter? And nobody can do everything. So how does your something play into the piece of it? So I think that, communicating that, really matters into that. But if you can understand how we got here, and if you can understand what you can do to get us to the preferred future, because again, no one can do everything, but everybody can do something.
Right.
Then you can start to see one of the things we say is our problems are a product of our progress, right? Mm-hmm. And we can have more patience for problems if we can actually see the progress. A lot of people get so focused on the problems, they don't realize, well, the reason we got here is because of progress. Let's just take roads as an easy example. Everybody's like, traffic's so bad, right? And so it's like, well, there's bad traffic because our community's growing, and that's so good.
Right.
And so you don't want your community to grow. And so, but now we have bad traffic. Well, then there's a big construction project going on. That takes forever. But you're like, well, I can have patience if I understand what they're building and how long it's going to take.
So good.
And it's like, I can do my commute every day for the next year in a little bad traffic, knowing that there's a solution coming. But I got to put all that into context. And I think that, as we're recruiting, retaining leaders, is like, if we can give them about that community, they can go and do that. But Here's the reality, where we sit today, especially post-COVID, almost everybody with high quality talent, they can do almost any job from anywhere.
Yeah.
So they don't have to be there. So if they're not in your city on purpose, they're gonna go somewhere else on purpose.
Yeah.
And when you realize that the most talented people in your community have options, well, then you want that option to be your community. And I think making them Memphians really matters in that. And honestly, you just tipped on something that we could talk all day long on, and we call it opportunity versus ownership. Do you have the,
Ooh.
like the, just knowing all the opportunities in your community doesn't necessarily mean you're going to do anything. But if I can create community ownership, I don't even have to tell you what to do. You're going to go initiate and figure out what to do with your community and how you can be involved. And that's our big goal. It's not telling you what the opportunities are or telling you what to do. It's just shifting it from everything's an opportunity for you to actually getting that heartfelt mind knowledge. Hey, I am an owner in this community. I play a role in this, whatever, and I need to do my part.
Yeah. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I love how it's come full circle. I even wrote down here, kind of a side note, the communion or the communication has to come and precedes the unity part, right? So to have community, you have to commune before you have a unity.
Yes, that's
the
good.
side note that I wrote here, but
Yeah.
I just love and this is the big thing, the intention behind everything, who you're bringing in, how you're talking to, why you're talking to them, what, the college students and again, the 6 months, the 6 weeks, the 6 days, the 6 hours of going back, like there's so much intentionality. And I think if people can get behind just being intentional with everything, you end up having that ownership that you're talking about. Like, I have to do my part. Like, intention just oozes out of not just you, but your organization. And I can only think that it's of every alumni that you have. Just a great job, John. I wanted to commend you on that. And just hearing it, there's no doubt that I'll be seeing it, the days that I do go to Memphis. But I just thank you for your time. Any last words or anything that you want people to visit or see, website wise, or anything that you're promoting at all?
Man, I mean, people could Google our stuff and check out our thing. But the thing I would say, Juan, is thanks for, asking good questions and letting me be on here. You're a really thoughtful host. But man, anybody that's still listening right now, the thing I would just tell you is that, you can make a little bit of difference wherever you're at, and don't give up on the whole thing because you can't do it all. And I would just say is make a difference and be contagious to others, and just encouraging that group around you. Not everybody has to do what you do. You don't have to do what everybody else does, but everybody can do a little something. And so, I really believe that when we do something good, it just becomes contagious. And that's the momentum that our communities need for whatever aspect that is. And so, go get after it, take initiative for the benefit of others, and love your neighbor.
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you, John, so much. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you and love everything that you do. Don't forget to visit the websites for John, and any social media will be down in the description. John, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. For all the listeners out there, don't forget to raise the bar. In order to get to the next level, you have to raise that bar, pull yourself up. You cannot do that unless you raise the bar. Thank you so much.